Good morning, everyone. Welcome
Buenas
to
tardes,
our
buenas,
facilities
buenos días a todos,
master
buenas
plan
tardes
town hall
al Plan
meeting.
Maestro de Instalaciones
We're going to give
y de
everybody
Junta de
about another
Ayuntamiento.
minute to
Les
join
voy a
us
dar a
virtually,
todos
and then
un
we're going to get
minuto
started
para que
with
nos
today's
acompañen
presentation.
virtualmente y vamos a
Thank you
comenzar
again
con
for
la
joining us
presentación.
for today's meeting.
Gracias por unirse a la Junta del día de hoy.
All right, everyone, it looks like we've slowed down with our attendees.
Okay, creo
So
que ya no
once again,
tenemos
thank you for
participantes, así
joining
que
us for
gracias
our
por
virtual town
asistir
hall meeting
a
today.
la
Just so
Junta de
everyone is
Ayuntamiento
aware,
virtual, así
we
que todos
are
estamos conscientes de
having
esto.
this meeting
Tenemos
interpreted
esta
live.
junta
I want to thank Miss
interpretada en
Vanessa
vivo.
Rivera
Quiero
for providing
agradecerle
the
a
Spanish
Miss Vanessa
translation
Rivera
while I'm
por
doing the
darnos
English version
la
as we go.
interpretación.
So if you hear me
Mientras yo
talking slow
digo
or
en
taking
español, si
pauses,
me
it's just
escuchan
so we don't
hablando
overload and overwhelm Miss Rivera as
más
she's
despacio, es para que Miss
facilitating the
Rivera
Spanish
pueda
version
hablar al
of
mismo tiempo que yo
this
y está
town hall
interpretando
meeting.
simultáneamente
So just to give you a quick overview
para que
of the
ustedes
way that we are going to proceed.
para que
I have
cómo
a
vamos a
short
proceder.
slide presentation
Tengo
which
una
provides an
presentación corta
overview
que nos
of
da una
the
información
facilities master
del
planning
plan
process.
maestro de instalaciones y el
Starting with our
proceso,
Y slide that you see
comenzando con
now,
la
we're going to talk about
diapositiva que están
the
viendo en este
process we went
momento,
through,
el
and then
proceso del
also the current
cual
considerations
hicimos y
that we
también
are
las
looking at
consideraciones que estamos
when we move forward with
cuando
the
estamos
facilities master plan.
en el plan
After the
maestro.
information
Después de la
presentation, which is a
información,
little
de
bit
la
more
presentación,
detailed
vamos a
information
tener
from the
más
video
detalles,
series that
informaciones
hopefully you
de
took some time to
los
watch,
detalles que espero que hayan
we'll open
tomado
it
el
up
tiempo para
for
ver y
town
vamos
hall,
a ver
for
el
questions,
tiempo
for comments, for
para
discussion,
preguntas, para
so that
comentarios,
we can make some
para que
informed
podamos hacer unas
recommendations to the
recomendaciones
school board
informadas
as we
a
move forward.
la junta
So without
de
further ado, to
directiva.
be
Ahora, sin
respectful of
empezar
everyone's
eso,
time
ahora
this
quiero
morning, we are
respetar el
going to
tiempo de
get
todos.
started.
Vamos a
So
comenzar.
the first
La
question
primera
you may have
pregunta
is,
que ustedes
why are
pudieran
we
tener es
considering
por qué
a
estamos
facilities
considerando
master
un
plan?
plan maestro de
And as you can see
instalaciones.
from this
Y
slide,
como
there's
pueden
three
ver de
kind of
las
core
diapositivas,
reasons as
hay
to why
tres.
we need one, and
Hay porque
why now
necesitamos
is
y
the
porque
appropriate
ahora
time to
es
consider a
el
facilities
tiempo
master plan.
adecuado para
So first and
a tener un
foremost,
maestro plano de instalación. La
we have
primera cosa y
years
la
of
más
deferred
importante,
maintenance across
tenemos
our buildings.
años
So
de
currently, the
mantenimiento en
Norristown Area
nuestros
School
suelos.
District
En
maintains
la
13
tenemos
facilities. Our 12 school buildings and the
12
administration
escuelas,
building here on
el
Whitehall Road.
edificio de
When I talk about
administrativo
years of
en
deferred
Whitehall Road,
maintenance,
y cuando estamos
we're
hablando con
talking
mantenimiento,
about,
estamos hablando
although we have wonderful
además de que
buildings, and although we
tenemos
have beautiful
muchos
buildings, we do
más,
have
y
old buildings.
tenemos
Our
edificios
newest new
hermosos,
constructed
son
building is Whitehall
el
Elementary
edificio
School,
más
which just
nuevo
celebrated
es la
its
escuela Whitehall,
31st
que acaba de
anniversary
celebrar su
of when it
aniversario
was
30,
opened.
cuando estaba abierto.
Our next newest
El
construction
siguiente
is Norristown Area High
edificio
School, which is
más
celebrating
nuevo
its
es
50th
el
anniversary this
área,
year.
la
Our remaining
preparatoria, que está
buildings are
celebrando
all
50 años, y
significantly older than 50 than Norristown Area High
los
School.
siguientes
When you talk
son
about
más
major
viejos que la
renovations and
preparatoria. Cuando
additions
estamos
to the
hablando de
buildings,
renovaciones más
the
grandes,
last major
la
addition we did was to the
última
East
adición que
Norriton Middle
tuvimos
School,
a la
and that was
escuela
way back in
secundaria East Norriton, y
2006.
eso fue en el
So we've
2006.
not done
Así que
a
no hemos
major
hecho
construction addition
construcciones
since
adicionales
East Norriton
desde
in
que
2000 and since
se
18
hizo
years
en
ago. We
East
did do
Norriton
a
18 años
smaller
atrás.
addition to the
Lo que
high
hemos
school
hecho una adición
with
pequeña en
the
la preparatoria
with the Obama era
con
stimulus funds.
con
But
los
again, when you
fondos
talk
de
about
la
major
área de
impact to
cuando
the
estuvo
buildings,
Obama en la presidencia,
we've not done any
y no hemos
significant
hecho
projects in a
nada
lot of years.
significativo
Because
en
we've
los
been an
últimos
underfunded
años, y
district,
porque
we have
no
years
hemos
and years and
tenido los
years of deferred
suficientes
maintenance.
fondos. Hemos
Old
tenido
buildings are
muchos, muchos,
great. They
muchos
don't build
años
them
en
the way
donde no
that
se
they
ha podido
used
hacer
to.
el mantenimiento
However,
y la forma en que se
to
están haciendo.
update and modernize them
Ahora, para
does come with
optimizar y
a significant
modernizar,
cost, and we're going to talk about those
viene con
costs
muchísimos
a little bit
costos, y
later in the
vamos a hablar
presentation
con
this
respecto
morning.
a los costos un poco
So number
después en la
one, the
presentación.
time
La
is
primera
right
vez,
to
el tiempo
update our aging
está bien
buildings.
para
Number
que
two, our
actualicemos a
district
los edificios
finances
más
have
viejos.
improved and have
Número dos,
stabilized.
ahora
We've worked hard over the
las
past, I'll
finanzas
say,
del distrito
6 to 8 to
se
10
han
years in the
balanceado.
district
Hemos
to try
trabajado
to
por 10 años
improve our district
ah,
financials.
en el
Um,
distrito para
as I
mejorar
said a little bit earlier, we
nuestro
are an
estatus
underfunded school
financiero.
district and
Y
continue to
hemos
be
hablado
an
con,
underfunded school district, but
hemos tenido
we're
pocos
not
fondos y
living
también somos un distrito
in
a
the
los
dire
cuales se les
financial
otorga
straits that we
pocos
have
fondos. Pero
in some
ahora
prior years.
tenemos
Evidence
en
of
los
that
años,
is, this is
evidencia
the
de
past
esto
three
es que
budgets, we've been able
tres
to increase staff and
en los 3 años
increase
pasados hemos
opportunities,
podido
all while not
mejorar lo
having
que
to
es
raise
el
local property
presupuesto.
taxes.
También no
This year,
hemos subido impuestos este año, estábamos
as we're
listos
working on the
y
proposed
mientras
budget for the
estamos
next school year,
trabajando
the 24-25 school year, we are planning and
el dinero que vamos a
working
tener para
with
el
a
próximo
fourth
año,
consecutive year of a
que es
0% tax increase. And
ah,
again, we're able to do so with,
y es una de las cosas que hemos
again, looking
podido
at,
hacer viendo el dinero que tenemos
excuse me,
disponible para el próximo año.
increased
Lo
staff and
siento.
increased
Y
programs again
hemos
next year. The
incluyendo
last piece is a
personal y
significant one,
programas.
although it
La
does
otra
have
parte
some
que es bastante
unknowns with it,
importante,
which is
una de las
late
cosas es
last
que
year,
el
the
año
Pennsylvania
pasado, al final del
Commonwealth
año,
Court ruled that
el
the way that the
Tribunal de
state of
Pennsylvania
Pennsylvania funds
hizo
public
un
schools is
fallo diciendo
unconstitutional.
que
From there,
el dinero que se le da a las escuelas de
the court
Pennsylvania es
directed both the governor and the
inconstitucional
legislature to come
y
back with a
el
response
gobernador
of how
tenía que
they would
regresar
fund schools differently.
con una propuesta y
They
cómo
formed the
iban a
Basic
darle los
Education
fondos a las
Funding
escuelas
Commission,
de
which
forma
released a
diferente.
report
Y se hizo un
in
informe
January.
en enero.
Governor Shapiro
El gobernador Shapiro
announced his proposed budget for next year. And
anunció el dinero que
in
se iba a
that, he
gastar para el
cited the court
próximo año,
ruling
el
and the
presupuesto,
commission's recommendation for
y las
a 7-year
recomendaciones
increased
para
amount of funding to go to public
incrementar lo
schools.
que es los fondos para
If
las escuelas
that
públicas en
commission's
los próximos 7
recommendation were to
años.
be
Si esa
implemented, North
recomendación de
Area School
ese
District
comité
would
se
see
recomienda,
a significant
Norriston
increase in
va a
state
tener
funding,
un
not only this coming
ingreso
year, but over the next
significativo en
5
los
to 7
siguientes
years if
5 a
the
7
state can
años,
figure out a
si
way to
es que
fund
el
it.
Estado puede
The commission's
ver de
proposal
qué forma
for next year
no
is a
lo puede
$13
dar.
million
El próximo
increase in
año
state funding
se
for us,
propone 13
and over the
millones de
7 years
dólares
would be
para
a
nosotros y
$53 million increase
en
in
los
state
próximos
funding.
7 años serían 50
Should we
millones
get those
del
funds,
Estado.
we would
Si
be able to
tenemos
move
eso,
on a
podemos
significant facilities master plan and move forward.
podemos
So,
implementar el plan
and
maestro de
because the judge is
instalaciones
going to
y porque
mandate
el juez va
that
a
the state follow
mandar
through with
que el
increased funding,
Estado
that, as we said when we talked about the
incremente los
why,
fondos
the
para las
time now is
escuelas
appropriate
basado
for
en el
us
que
to start to
es por
plan
eso que
as if
nosotros
we're going to get
tenemos que
those
empezar a
increases
planear cómo vamos
and
a ver
to start to address our
ese
facilities.
crecimiento para mejorar nuestras instalaciones.
So with that,
Con
we
eso,
currently
en
we're
este
working on
momento
our
estamos
district
hablando
comprehensive or strategic plan for the next 3 years.
en los
The
siguientes 3
Pennsylvania
años.
Department of
El
Education
departamento,
requires
la
school
Secretaría de
districts to develop a
Educación
plan in 3-year planning
requiere que
cycles.
tengamos
We're very, very pleased
planificación
that the
en
school
ciclos de
board
3
just
años
approved our proposed
y
plan, which will take
la mesa
effect this
directiva
July
aprobó
1st. Will
nuestro
be in
plan
effect
y
through
que
for the
se empezó a hacer en julio,
2024
que nos
through the
va a llevar
2027
desde el
school years.
2024
As you can
al
see
año
in our comprehensive
2027 de
plan,
años escolares.
we
Como pueden ver, el
identified
plan
facilities in the
comprensivo,
learning environment as
identificamos
one
las
of our
instalaciones
4
en el
priority
ambiente
areas
educativo
in
en
our
las 4
comprehensive
áreas de
plan.
prioridad en
So we
el plan
identified the why we need to
que
develop a plan, and by
tenemos,
including it
decidimos
as a
el por qué
priority
la
area,
hacemos
we're putting our
incluirnos.
money where our mouth is. We're putting it in
Una de
writing
las cosas
that this is
importantes
something
es
that we're going to
saber cuál es la
commit
prioridad y
to
vamos a hacer
acting on over the life of this next
una
comprehensive
promesa
plan,
de
and
donde
probably
vamos
a
a
comprehensive
desempeñar
plan
y
after that, and
a
maybe one beyond that. But
mejorar
very
las cosas.
simply,
Pero ahora
we identified this as
simplemente
a priority with a
identificamos
very
esto como
simple
una
statement
prioridad con
of improvements in district facilities
um,
are needed.
las
From
mejoras en
there,
las instalaciones del
from that
distrito son
priority,
necesarias.
we
Ahora,
jointly
basado en
wrote 2
eso,
goals, which will be part of our
tuvimos
24 to
metas que
27
serían
plan. Number
que van a
1 is to
ser
develop and implement a comprehensive facilities
de los
master
siguientes
plan
3 años,
that will
es
carry us
mejorar
forward for the next 10 to
implementar un plan
15 years. So again, this isn't a
comprensivo
3-year
en
plan. This is
todas
really
las
looking forward to
escuelas
the
y los
next
edificios,
generation
que eso
of
va a llevarnos a la
Norristown and
siguiente
Norristown students
generación
and
y los
families.
estudiantes y
And goal 8
familias.
is to
Y
define investments needed to
la
complete
meta
a
8 es
transformative
para
infrastructure
definir
change afford a
inversiones para
moderate and
completar
meaningful
la
educational experience.
infraestructura y
So
los cambios
that very
para
simply
una
means
experiencia
we're not
educativa
just going to
moderna
build to
y
build.
que
We're going to
signifique
make sure
algo.
that when
Eso
we go
simplemente
through this
vamos a
facilities
hacer
master
que
plan,
cuando
that we are
sigamos este
intentional,
plan
we are
maestro de instalaciones,
purposeful,
que tenemos
that the
intención,
changes that we make
propósito y
and
que
anything
cambiamos
we
y que los
do
cambios que
is
hagamos y
supportive
que lo que
of the
hagamos
student
esté
experience, and to
apoyado
make sure our
apoya a
students
los
have
estudiantes
school
y para que
facilities
los
that will
estudiantes
help them
tengan
on that last line
instalaciones
that'll be life and future
que
ready
sean
upon
para
graduation.
que estén listos para el futuro y
So let's
una
get
vez que
into
se
the
gradúen.
planning process that
Ahora
we
vamos a hablar
undertook.
con respecto al
So we know our
plan que
why.
tomamos.
We
Sabemos
now
el
know
por
that
qué.
we've
Ahora
committed
sabemos
to
que
developing a facilities master
estamos
plan as part of
dedicados
our
al plan
comprehensive plan.
maestro
So
de comprensivo
how
y
do we go about
cómo
doing this?
vamos a hacer
Well,
esto.
quite
Bueno,
honestly, we went
y
out and hired experts.
honestamente,
We
no,
partnered with
no
Schrader
somos
Group,
expertos,
which is
pero nos
a local architectural and school
contratamos a
design
Schrader
firm
Group.
to help
Es
us
una
through
firma de
three parts
arquitectura
of
e
developing a
ingeniería
master plan.
para que nos ayude
First part
a
is a
desarrollar el
feasibility
plan
study,
Mastercard.
which
El
is
primero
what
es un
work needs to
plan
be
de
done in our
qué se puede
schools
hacer,
to
qué cosas se
update,
pueden hacer,
renovate, and modernize.
renovar y
Second is an enrollment
modernizar. La
study
segunda
to make
es
sure that
un
our
estudio
schools
de
have the
matriculación
capacity
para
to meet
asegurarnos que
the
la
student
escuela tenga la
population we'll have
capacidad
both now
para,
and in the
que
future.
tiene,
And then the
para contener
last
a
and
los
most
estudiantes ahora
important
y en el
part of
futuro. Y
this
la última
was
parte
Schrader
es,
walking us through
nos va
what
a,
is to
Schroeder nos
consider
dio
what is
un
the
tool
best
para considerar
configurations
cuál es
of
la
our
mejor
schools, what are the best
configuración de
uses
las
of our
escuelas, qué son
schools,
los
our
mejores usos de las
classrooms, our
escuelas,
facilities,
los
and did we
salones y
want
las
to or need to
instalaciones. Y
consider
queremos
anything
considerar
new or
cualquier
different
cosa
from
nueva
the
o
way that we currently
diferente de la
configure
forma en que
our
estamos
13 buildings and
configurando
our 12
los
schools
13
in our
edificios y las
Area School
escuelas
District.
en el área
So let's start with
escolar
the
de Norristown.
feasibility
Ahora
study
vamos
portion
a
of this.
comenzar con
So
respecto
Schrader
al
came in
estudio
and did
de
a full
feasibilidad.
evaluation of
Ahora
the
la
13
evaluación de
district
los
buildings
hizo una evaluación
this
de los
past
13
summer
edificios en el
2023.
pasado verano, que fue
They looked at
el año
everything beyond
2023. Vieron
everything. So they
todo
looked at architectural,
en
they looked at
detalle, a lo
code, they
arquitectual,
looked at
el
structural,
código,
they looked at
la
engineering,
estructura, la
they looked at
ingeniería.
lights, they looked at
Revisaron las
floors, they looked
luces,
at
los
roofs, they looked
pisos,
at
los
HVAC,
techos
they looked
y
at windows
vieron
and
el
doors,
aire
they looked at
acondicionado,
parking
las
lots,
puertas y
they looked at
ventanas,
fields,
los
they looked
estacionamientos,
at
los
floors,
campos,
they looked at
los
pipes, they
pisos.
looked at,
Vieron
again, anything you can imagine.
la instalación de
From there,
plomería,
they
lo que ustedes puedan
generated
imaginarse. Y de ahí generaron
three-volume. I have
un
stacks of
volumen que
binders
tengo
in my
unas
office with the
carpetas en
complete
mi
of that
oficina
review.
con
Every
cada
page of that
detalle. Cada
corresponds
página de
with
ella
a location
corresponde
in the school district.
a un
So
lugar
I've
en
shared at
el
previous
distrito
town hall
escolar.
meetings that, for instance, there's a page in
Anteriormente
there
he
that
visto en
corresponds
una
to the renovation
página que
needs of a
corresponde a
stairwell here in the administration building. That it needs new
necesidades
lights,
que
it needs new
tiene
floor coverings, it needs
en
new
las
stairwell
escaleras del
treads, and
edificio
again, all of the
necesita luz,
updates,
necesita
switches,
pisos,
all those
necesita
pieces are done. And there is a single page or
placas
more
en
for
las
every
paredes,
single
muchas cosas.
location in
Y
every building in our school district.
hicieron
So again,
una
this was a
evaluación de
very,
cada
very,
parte
very deep
del
dive
edificio, de cada edificio en el
into
distrito
the
escolar,
updates that are
muy, muy
needed.
detallado de los
So if
detalles que
we
necesitan.
just
Si
renovate,
ahora podemos renovar
modernize, and
y
update
modernar
and
y
change nothing,
actualizar
the price
y
tag
cambiar
comes in at about
nada,
$180 million
eso
worth of work that
normalmente
is needed.
viene con un
And of
precio
that
de
$180
180
million,
millones de dólares para renovar,
$30 million
modernizar y
has been
actualizar. Ahora,
identified in
30
high
millones se
priority
ha
phase
hecho
one needs within the
que son
first
las prioridades en la
5
fase
years
1 que se necesita hacer dentro de los siguientes
of
5 años
the plan.
del
So to
plan.
go into a little bit of detail,
Ahora,
I'm going to show two quick
para
slides,
darles un poco de
three
detalles,
slides. So
voy
this first
a
one
darles
shows
3
the
diapositivas. La
estimated
primera
cost,
muestra
improvement cost
el costo
by
estimado
location.
por cada
Soft
lugar,
costs
el
include
costo suave, que
architecture
incluye lo
fees,
que son
permitting
los costos
fees,
arquitecturales, los
and also
permisos,
anything that's not
y
bolted
también
down.
cada
So again,
que,
replacement of
digamos, que no
furniture,
esté
classroom
fijado
fixtures,
a
things
lo
like
que
that.
son los
So you can
escritorios,
see
cosas en los
just the cost
salones, y como
alone is
pueden
about
ver, el costo
130 to
en sí
140 million
sale
dollars.
entre 30
Soft
a
costs come
140
in at about
millones.
$40 million.
El costo
And
suave son
the
de
total
40 millones
cost
de
again
dólares
is that on
y
that
un
high
costo
side,
total
about
es en el
$180
área
million.
alta es
It
como
is
de
important
180
to
millones de
note
dólares. Es
the
importante
$180
ver
million
que los
are in
180 millones
today
de dólares
dollars. Is if we
son
could do
dólares
all
de
of this
hoy.
work in
Si hacemos todo este
2024.
trabajo en el
Please note, it
2024,
would
por
be
favor
virtually
noten,
impossible
y
for us
es
to get all the work
virtualmente
done under today
imposible que
dollars.
nosotros hagamos todo el
Even again,
trabajo
if
en
we
180
just did
millones
this
de dólares.
within the next
Incluye, y solo
2 to
digamos que lo
5 to
hagamos
10
entre 2
years,
a
the
3
cost
a
would
5
probably flow
años, a 10
upwards of
años,
$200 million as labor
el
costs
costo
increase
sería
and materials costs
más de
increase as
200
well.
millones de dólares, ya para
please note there was
que
a
la
double
mano de
asterisk
obra
with
increzca.
Blackstone Middle
Ahora
School
podemos hablar
that currently
Blackstone
states
Middle School, que
renovation costs of
ahorita
13 to 15
tiene
million dollars. That does
renovaciones de
not
13
account for
millones
any
de dólares. Ese
um,
no cuenta o se
remediation we
incluye
would
en
have
la
to do to become fully compliant
remediación
with the
que tenemos que
American
hacer
with the American with
para,
Disabilities
para
Act.
estar
So if we
con
did
al día con la
want
ley
to
de
renovate Blackton
discapacitados
as is, the
americanos.
cost
Y una de
there
las
to become
cosas
an
que estamos
ADA
haciendo
compliant
es,
facility would be significantly
tenemos
higher.
que, si tuviéramos que ponerla
Here's a
al día,
breakdown
sería
of
bastante, el
Schrader
precio sería
looking
todavía
again
bastante alto.
at
Ahora, si
the
estamos
cost by
viendo lo que el
location
costo
in
del
terms of
grupo
priority
Schrader
one. What
con
are those
respecto al
must-do
costo,
things that they say
son
are
las cosas
0 to
que
5
ellos
year?
dicen que tenemos que
Safety,
hacer de entre
things that'll
0 y
keep us
5,
open, things
cosas
that
de
will keep us
seguridad, cosas que nos
operational
van a mantener en
for
operación
in the next short
en los
term. Then you
siguientes,
can see there's a line item for
en el
6 to
futuro
10,
corto.
and
Ahora
then there's
tenemos
some
cosas
costs
de
that go
5 a 10 y
outward, that
tenemos
they
los
say we could
costos
defer a little
y
bit
también
later, beyond that
podemos
6 to 10 year
hacerlo o
window.
gastarlo, digamos, en una ventana de
What is
10
important to
años.
note here
Lo que
as
es
I
importante que
zoom in
tengamos
on
que
the
ver
priority
cuando
one
vemos en
costs
la prioridad
is if you
1
look at some of
es
our
que si
older
ven uno de
buildings,
los
Roosevelt
edificios más
campus,
grandes, Roosevelt Campus,
Eisenhower, Blackson,
Eisenhower,
again, Blackson
Blackson,
does
de
not
nuevo,
include
Blackson
the
no
ADA
incluye
costs.
lo que
You'll notice
son
those
los
are our
costos para
higher
los
renovation amounts.
discapacitados,
You look
de
at
la ley de
Whitehall being our
discapacitados
newest
americanos.
building, only
Whitehall
has
es el
about
edificio
$300,000 worth of immediate needs.
es
You
el
look at
edificio
Paul
más
Fly
nuevo y pueden
Elementary
ver que son
School
300
at 1.8
do-
million. That would also
de
include their
gastos.
parking
Ahora,
lot,
otra de las
which if
cosas
you've
que
ever been there,
incluye
you
lo que
know
es
is a
el
significant
estacionamiento y como
area of
ustedes
immediate
saben, son
need
áreas
at
de
Paul Fly.
necesidad inmediata en Paul
North
Fly.
High School,
La
although it is not,
preparatoria
it is
de
one of our
Norristown
newer
y
buildings,
que es
does
uno
have
de
a
los
high
edificios
cost
más nuevos,
because
no,
again, it
no
is one of
tiene
our
un
largest
precio alto
buildings.
porque es uno de
It is
los
our largest building
edificios
in terms
más
of square
grandes. De
footage
hecho,
and
es
student
uno de los
population there.
edificios más
So
grandes,
these are again all
contando
of the
los
immediate
metros
things,
cuadrados
totaling a little
y
over $31 million that again will
31
keep us their immediate
millón de,
needs in terms
un
of
poquito más de
code,
30 millones de
safety, and
dólares y eso nos
operations to keep
ayuda
those
a mantener los
buildings
edificios
open.
seguros
So if
y
anything, if
operables.
we go
Una de
down the
las
road,
cosas que
these
vamos
are
a
the
decir,
$30 million
decimos,
that we
estas son
should and
cosas
take
que
care of
llega a
first
30
before we
millones de
look at
dólares que
doing
deberíamos hacer
any of the other
antes de ver
wants or
cualquier
needs in
otra
the
de las
building.
cosas de la que
So
queremos
that's just
hacer
a
o
quick
que se
high level
necesitan
of the work that
en el
has to be
distrito.
done.
Esas son
So
cosas que se
second, we
tienen
need
que
to take a
hacer.
look at
La
our
segunda
enrollment in
cosa es
terms of
tenemos que
our
ver
building
la
sized right
matriculación
for
basado
now
en
and for later.
el tamaño de
So
cada
with that,
escuela.
Schrader and the
Con
district
eso, el
partnered with
Schrader
Montgomery
y
Educational
con
Associates to do
el
an
distrito
enrollment
se
study.
puso en
We've used the
cooperación con
Montgomery
Montgomery
Education
Education
Associates
Associations
twice
dos
prior
veces.
since
Lo
I've
hemos
been
hecho
here
antes desde que
superintendent.
he sido
And Bill and his team do
superintendente
excellent work.
y
They've been within 2%
hacen
accuracy on
bastante
their
buen
studies.
trabajo.
And I
Siempre
love
han estado
sharing that the
dentro de un
last
margen
study
de
they did in the
2% de
first
error
year, they
y en el
predicted
primer año
Marshall
y ellos
School Elementary
predijeron que
School's
Marshall
enrollment
Street,
within one
la
student.
matriculación
So again, Bill does
solo
a
con
great
un error
job
de un
just
estudiante.
understanding
Entonces,
the
hacen un
birth
gran
rates,
trabajo con
the
respecto a
mobility
la población,
of how people move
la
in and
tasa
out
de
of the district and
nacimiento,
within
las
the
personas que
district, and
entran
also
y
the
salen del
impact
distrito
of
y el
planned future
impacto
constructed housing
para
projects
planificar con
within
respecto a planificación de
within the school
construcción
district.
dentro
So
del
with
distrito
that,
escolar. Con
we take a
eso,
look at
vamos a tomar
the
un
projected
vistazo
number of
a
students.
los
We generate an individual
estudiantes que
building
se ha
capacity,
proyectado.
and then we look at
ah,
capacity
Vemos
now
a la
versus
capacidad
capacity going out
con
5 years.
ahora y la
Beyond
capacidad que
that, we'll
tendremos en
probably
5 años,
engage
y más
Montgomery
allá de
again
eso vamos a
because they've
tener
started to
que
go out with their
contratar
predictions.
a Montgomery
Again, just
Education de
a less
nuevo
predictable
porque
they
obviamente
become.
tenemos
But
que ver
Bill,
si
again,
es que algo
within
va
that
cambiando,
5 year window,
pero
keeps
dentro de
his
lo siguiente,
work
la
history
ventana de
within
5 años
2%
se
accuracy.
trabaja y están dentro de un
This
margen de
slide I know
2% de
is
error.
a lot of
Esta
information on here, but if
diapositiva
you
son
look at the
bastante
3 lines, show you
información,
what the
pero si
trends
ven
are going to
las
be
3
in our
líneas
enrollment from the 2022
son
school year when
las cosas
Bill
que se determinan
went
en los
backwards a
siguientes
little bit with his
años.
enrollment,
Una de
going
las
10 years
cosas,
out to the 2032-2033 school year.
ahora
And the blue
basándonos
bar is where, again, is that
en
5
el
years
año
out window of where we're going to
hasta el
be.
año 20.
So if you look at the blue line,
Ahora,
the
si
top
ven
line
la
is our
línea
elementary
azul,
enrollment,
son
and you can see
la
that
matriculación
line
de las
is
escuelas
predicted
primarias. Y como
to
pueden
go
ver,
down from where
que
we
va a
are now,
bajar de
and
donde
will
estamos
decrease
ahorita y
slightly
va
before,
a
again, it'll go back up to
bajar
about where we
y
were
ahora va a
about
subir
10
un
years
poco
out.
más en 10
Middle school,
años.
the yellow
La
line is
escuela,
predicted
las
to
escuelas
decrease and
secundarias,
stabilize
la
over the
línea
next couple
amarilla
years.
se
High
está
school, as
planeando
you'll see,
que
is at a high point
baje.
and
Ahora la
will go
preparatoria
slightly
va a
before starting to
subir
trend
y después va a
downward
bajar y vamos a
over on the
empezar a
tail end of the
bajar
5 year window.
en la ventana de
So
los 5
understanding
años.
where our
Entonces,
population will
entendiendo
go
cómo
is
está la
important
población el día de
understand
hoy es
our rooms.
importante
So from
para
there, we
saber qué
worked
es lo que
with
se tiene que
Schrader
hacer ahora
and took a
trabajando
look
con
at the square
Schrader y
footage, our
bajando
room
a lo que
usage,
son los metros
and
cuadrados,
they go back and
el
look at our
uso
buildings
y ven a
and
nuestros edificios
compare it to
y lo
building
comparan
capacity.
con
So
la
in
capacidad
elementary
que tienen los
schools,
edificios. En la escuela
a good rule
primaria,
of thumb that the Pennsylvania Department of
una buena
Education
regla que tiene
shares
que usar,
is
que
elementary schools
utiliza la
should
Secretaría
use
de
90% of
Educación,
their
es
square
si en
footage
la escuela debería usar
to
90%
determine
de
capacity.
los
So if
metros
you look at
cuadrados de,
where we
de la
are, our
capacidad
elementary
total. Y si
schools are
vemos
currently
ahorita
and
en la escuela
projected
primaria,
to operate
se
within
está
that
programado
90%.
dentro de los
So again,
90.
we're good now and
Ahora
we're good in the
estamos
future.
ahora,
Middle
estamos
schools should
bien
work at
ahorita y en el
85 to
futuro.
90%
Las
capacity.
escuelas
And
secundarias
if you
deberían
look at again
trabajar
those
a una
trend
capacidad de
lines, middle
85 al
schools are operating
90% y
at
si
or
podemos ver
below that
en
moving
este
forward. So our
momento
middle schools have
estamos
plenty of room.
moviendo.
The
Ahora
concern is at the high school.
las
The high
secundarias están
school
bien. La
recommends that
preocupación
we
es en la
operate at
preparatoria,
80%
ya que se
operating
debe
capacity,
recomendar al
and we're currently at
80%
or above
y en
those
este
numbers
momento
now,
estamos
and we'll continue to
encima
be there
o por
moving
encima de esos
forward.
números y
We do have a
vamos
little
a
bit of room at
incrementar
Roosevelt
eso.
campus,
Tenemos un
but
poco
again, that is a
de
small building
espacio
that
en Roosevelt,
really
es un
can't
edificio más pequeño
relieve some
y
of the
realmente
overcrowding
lo
we
que
have
queremos hacer
because
es
again, the
para
use of that
aliviar
campus moving
la
forward. So
sobreprobación en las
elementaries are
otras
good
áreas.
now and moving
Las
forward.
escuelas
Middles are good
primarias
now.
están
The high
bien,
school
las
has some
secundarias
urgency
también,
that
la
we need to address it
preparatoria tiene un poco de urgencia que debemos
with
atacar
some facility planning.
con el plan
So
de
with that, we
instalación.
now
Con eso,
know
ahora sabemos
what needs to be
qué es
looked
lo
at
que
in
se
terms of
necesite
renovation.
hacer con
We
respecto a las
now we know what
renovaciones y también
where
sabemos
our
cuál es,
enrollments are and our
cuál es
capacity
la
are. So the
matriculación y
last
la
thing Schrader
capacidad. Y
walked
la
us through
última
was
cosa que
considerations for
Schrader nos dio
reconfiguration.
fue la
Do we want to
configuración.
use our 12
¿Queremos
buildings
utilizar
differently or
los dos
creatively?
edificios
Or
diferente o
do
más,
we
de una
want
forma
to
creativa o
look
queremos
at doing
verlos
some additional constructions
construcción
to
adicional
better optimize the
para
teaching and learning
optimizar
experience
mejor la
for
experiencia
our
de
students?
enseñanza o para nuestros
Schrader has an
estudiantes?
excellent
Schrader
community workshop
tiene
process, which is one of
un
the core reasons we
proceso
selected them. They
de un
facilitated 3
taller para la
workshop meetings
comunidad.
in
Nos
which
dieron 3
40 and
talleres
more shared
para
interest
donde
partners
40
participated. We
personas
had board members,
participaron,
we
40
had
tuvimos
administrative professional
miembros de la mesa
support staff,
directora,
we had
tuvimos
parents and family members, and we had representatives of our community
empleados
organization and
administrativos,
community
profesionales,
partners
padres,
in those
miembros
workshops.
de la familia y organizaciones en la comunidad.
As we work through the 3
Cómo trabajamos
processes
con los
and
3
tried to come
procesos
up with
y
maybe some
hemos
different
tratado
options
de
to
ver tal vez un
reconfigure a
poco de
building,
opciones
there were some
para
themes
las
that drove our work.
configuraciones
So the team
de
came
los
together
edificios.
and said, as we
Uno de los
decision
equipos
make,
dijo
what
que
are the things that
como
we
una
need to keep in
decisión, cuáles
mind
son las
to
cosas que
help
debemos
consider
tener en
maybe
mente
looking
para
at things either the
considerar
same or
viendo
differently?
las cosas,
These 5
de
themes
hacerlas
we're
de una
committed
forma.
to
Estos
and drove
equipos, 5 equipos se hicieron
the process of
para
considering options
determinar
and
el
moving
proceso
our considerations and
y las
recommendations
consideraciones y
forward.
las
So number
recomendaciones que se
1,
hicieron para
the
estos
committee felt
edificios. La
strongly to
primera
best serve
sintió
students,
que
we should do
para
more than just
servirle más
renovate,
al mejor a
modernize, and
los
keep the
edificios
current
debemos
configurations. They felt
renovar
that we
y
should look
tener
at
las
different
mismas
and better options
configuraciones.
for the use of
Hay
our school
otras
buildings.
opciones
Second,
mejores para utilizar los edificios.
everybody felt
2,
strongly that
todos
we should provide
quieren y
ninth
se
grade
sienten
additional programming
bastante
supports through
seguros de que
facility
debemos
planning, and by doing
ofrecer
so,
un
maybe
programa de
address some
apoyo
of the
para los niños en
overcrowding at the
noveno
high
grados
school.
y tal
Our
vez de
ninth
esa
graders
forma
have
bajar
struggled
la
as they transitioned up
sobrepopulación
to the high school with
en la
academics
preparatoria.
and
En la segunda
behavioral
es con
needs, and the
para
committee felt
ayudar
that
a
we should try
las
to
necesidades
facility
académicas y de
plan to provide
comportamiento
some additional
para
supports there.
darles apoyos adicionales
Number
ahí.
3, the committee
El
felt
número
that all
3,
NASD
el
students should
comité
come
sirve
together
que todos los
before ninth
estudiantes
grade.
deben de
Currently, our
ponerse
students go out
o
to
juntarse antes
one
del
of their
noveno
6
grado.
in-neighborhood
Una de
elementary schools.
las,
3 do
después de
go through
que
the
están
Musselman
en las
Learning Center
escuelas
before going to their
de los
neighborhood
edificios
elementary
primarios,
school.
después en la
They then
secundaria
feed to
y
3 separate middle
después
schools.
están
The
en 3
first time our students
secundarias
come together
separadas
as a
y la primera vez
community
que se
is
junten
in
como
ninth grade at
comunidad
Denard
es
Saturday
en
High School.
noveno grado en
The
la
community felt
preparatoria.
strongly we
La
should look at
comunidad
options to
dice que
have our students
deberíamos ver
come together
opciones para que los
for a
estudiantes estén
more
juntos
unified and
en
equitable learning
una
experience
experiencia
before ninth grade.
equitable y mejor
Second,
en
or
noveno
excuse
grado.
me, number 4,
Perdón, lo
our
siento,
fifth graders
segundo,
should
los
not be
4,
in the same building
los
as our
quinto
eighth
grados no
graders.
deberían estar
Currently,
en los
all
mismos
3 of our
edificios
middle
de los
schools are 5-2A
estudiantes de octavo
buildings.
grado.
That change was
Actualmente
made
ellos
more than a
comparten
decade ago
espacio
and was
en las
done simply
secundarias y se ha
for
hecho una la
building
pasada
capacity
década
when our
basado en
elementary
la
enrollment grew
capacidad de,
to where we
de
could
las
not house
escuelas,
fifth
ya
grade
que
in
no
our elementary
pudimos
schools anymore.
los niños de
So
quinto
the committee
grado en las
felt
escuelas
strongly we
primarias.
should try to
Entonces el
see, can we
comité
come up
se
with a
siente
configuration
bastante
that would
fuerte en esta
separate our
opinión,
fifth
en
graders from
donde
our eighth graders.
deberíamos
And
hacer algo para
lastly, that we
separar a
want
los
to
niños de
maintain our
quinto
neighborhood
y los
elementary
de octavo
schools
grado.
to the
Y
greatest
5
extent that we can.
mantener las escuelas primarias
So
en lo que se
from that,
pueda.
Schrader walked
De
us
eso,
through,
Schroeder
again, those
nos
3
hizo,
workshops, and we were overachievers.
tuvimos 3.
All told, Schrader said we should start with, 5, no
Deberíamos
more than 6
empezar con
options.
más
to the first
5
meeting,
y
we
no más de
brought
6
10.
opciones. En la primera
From
opción
there,
empezamos
there were
con
pieces
10,
we liked
después hubo
that
partes que nos
we continued
gustaron,
to discuss. We
que
brought 7
pudimos
options
platicar al
to the
respecto, y
final
después
meeting.
7
And again,
opciones,
lots
y
of
la
great
últimamente
discussion, and
bastantes
those things were
pláticas
modified
buenas,
as we
y
move forward.
se
So
modificaron
where are we at
cuando
now
tuvimos
after
las
the
demás.
community workshop? Normally
Después de que
Schrader ends
tuvimos
up and
el
brings
taller
recommendations to the
comunitario,
board.
Schrader tiene una
I felt it was
recomendación para
important that
la
we
mesa
start this town
directiva,
hall
y debemos que
process because
empezamos
where we ended and
estas
what we're
juntas de
currently
ayuntamiento
considering
para que
represents
nosotros
a
podamos
bold
informar, y
reconfiguration
ponemos
that I'm going to
una
walk you through
reconfiguración
momentarily.
bastante fuerte
That
que
bold
les voy a decir cómo
reconfiguration
se va a hacer.
also
Esa
comes with an increased price
reconfiguración
tag.
también
And
tiene
you'll see
un
why we're
incremento
going
en
to go
el
through
costo,
that.
y por
But
eso
to do what
cuando
I'm going to
hablemos de
present
eso y para poder
swells
hacer eso,
the total cost from
es,
180 million up to
incrementa el costo
330
de
million
180 millones
dollars.
a
And one of the
330
important
millones
reasons
de
why,
dólares. Y
again,
una
we
de
want to
las
be
cosas
very
importantes
deliberate
que
in
debemos
getting people's
tener
feedback is we want to find
concientización
ways
es
to minimize the
dar,
impact for taxpayers.
tener
So we want
la
to
opinión
sit
de
there
las
and
comunidades
gather input.
para
Not only is this a
tener
good
un menor
plan, but we
impacto en
want to
la
make sure
comunidad,
that
pero
we're
también
hearing from
tenemos que
our
tener,
legislators.
escuchar
Are they going
de
to move
los
forward with the
del
commission's
gobierno.
recommendation for
Están
increased funding that
escuchando
would
las
allow us to
recomendaciones
offset
para que nos
almost all
den
of
más
this,
dinero, para que podamos
the
costear
cost of
estas
this
cosas,
facilities
el
master
costo
plan
del
moving
plan
forward.
maestro,
And
y
again,
para de
trying
aquí
to
en
minimize
adelante,
the
y
impact on
tratar de
taxpayers who have been
minimizar el
overtaxed over
impacto
the
a
past
los
decade or two here
contribuyentes
in
que se
Norristown.
han afectado en
So let's
los
dive right
pasadas
into it
décadas
in
aquí en
terms of,
Northern. Ahora
here
vamos
are
a
the
hablar con respecto
considerations that we
profundamente
are
a las
going to ask for your
consideraciones
thoughts and impact on,
que queremos
your
que nos
input on.
den sus
So number
ideas u
one,
opiniones. La
this
primera.
addresses
La
two things:
primera es
additional programming for the ninth grade and relieving the capacity issues we're
la
having at North
construcción
Center and high
dedicada para
school.
un ala de
So
noveno
consideration number
grado en
one
la
would be to
preparatoria. La
construct a
primera
new addition
consideración es
on North
construir una
Center and high
adición
school
en la
that would house
preparatoria
a dedicated
que
wing for the ninth grade
tendría
academy where they would
una ala
receive all
completamente
core
para los
subject
niños de
classes. We would
de
complete
noveno
all
grado,
other
en donde
identified
van a recibir
renovations
las
at the high
áreas
school.
básicas,
Again,
y
this
también las
allows our ninth graders to
renovaciones. Se
remain at the high
identifican las
school
renovaciones
to
de la
have a more
preparatoria
supportive
para
ninth
que
grade
tengan
experience, but to also
una
still
experiencia
be
de
up
noveno
there for
grado
all the
con más
extracurriculars
apoyos,
and have
con
access to the
extracurriculares,
great
y
elective
acceder
offerings that we
a
have
las
within Norristown
opciones
Area High School.
selectivas que tenemos
By
como
adding a
opción en
new
la
wing, it
preparatoria.
also would relieve
Añadir
some of the capacity issues that we're having and give
estamos
the high school
haciendo,
some much
es
needed space
es un espacio
for
mucho más
programming and for
que se
our
necesita para
students
el
up there.
programa para los estudiantes.
Consideration number
Ahora,
two
consideración
would be
número
to
2
consider,
sería que
since we're adding so
consideremos,
much new
ya que
space at
estamos
the high
ayudando a un
school,
nuevo
to
espacio en
consider
la preparatoria,
relocating the Roosevelt
considerar
Campus program to the current new
el,
wing, which was not the new addition we're
el programa
talking
de
about as part
Roosevelt
of this project, but the new wing of
a
the
la
high
nueva
school
ala de la
that was done in
preparatoria que se ha hecho
2008
en el
and operate
2008
as a
y
school within a
opera como
school.
una
The
escuela dentro
reason
de
the
una
committee
escuela.
came
La
up with this
razón
is we're
por
going to
la
allow
que el
Roosevelt
comité dijo
students
es para que los
access
estudiantes de
the
Roosevelt tengan
elective
acceso
offerings at the high
a
school
las
and
opciones
would
selectivas en
allow
la
them
preparatoria,
access
y
to the
también les
extracurricular
permita
opportunities at main
las
campus
oportunidades
that they currently
extracurriculares
have
en
over at
el
the
campus
Roosevelt
primario
campus.
que no tienen
And
en este
again, the
momento en
committee
Roosevelt.
wanted
Y de
to
nuevo
offer
el
that. We know
comité
that there are
quiere
other
ofrecer eso.
considerations to doing
Sabemos que
that,
hay otras
but again,
consideraciones,
with the
pero
new addition at the high school,
dentro de
this is
la
something we could
adición es
talk
algo que
about doing.
pudiéramos hablar y pudiéramos
Consideration numbers,
decidir si se
the
puede
next
hacer.
set are going to
La
talk about middle
siguiente
school
es
and
que
address
vamos a hablar con respecto a las
those pieces.
secundarias y
So
hablar con
consideration
respecto a
three
ello.
would be
La
to
consideración 3
construct a new
sería
addition on the
construir a una
Eisenhower
adición
Science and
en
Technology Leadership
la
Academy. We would complete all our
secundaria
renovations
Eisenhower,
at
completar
Eisenhower,
todas las
and then
renovaciones
Eisenhower would
Eisenhower,
become
y la
our
configuración
fifth
de
and
Eisenhower
sixth grade
sería
center for the
el
entire
centro
district.
de
So
quinto y
number
sexto
one,
grado en todo el
this
distrito.
accomplishes
Primero,
separating our fifth
esto
graders from our eighth
ayuda
graders.
y
And
completa el
second, it
separar los
accomplishes the
estudiantes de
theme
quinto
of
y
bringing our
octavo grado,
students together
y
before
para
ninth
que todos
grade
estén
in, again, that
juntos
more
antes de noveno
equitable and
grado,
unified
algo más
district
unificado
experience of middle school.
y
So if we're converting
igualitario.
Eisenhower to a fifth and sixth grade
Ahora,
center,
cuando
you should
tengamos
not be
en
surprised the next
Eisenhower,
consideration is what are we going to
la
do with our
siguiente
seventh and
cosa
eighth
que vamos a
graders?
hacer con
And that would
los
be to
séptimo y
construct a
octavo
new
grado.
addition on the East Norton Middle School.
Y eso es
We'd
hacer
complete all the
una
other
adición en
renovations
East
at East
Norriton, a
Norton,
ayudar
and
a
then
todas las
East Norton
renovaciones de
would
East
be
Norriton, y East
reconfigured to
Norriton
house
sería
all seventh and
reconfigurada
eighth
para tener
graders
a todos
for the
los
Norristown
niños de
Area School
séptimo y
District.
octavo grado
We'll talk
de
about what we would do
Norristown.
with Bloxton,
Y
our third
también
middle
tenemos que
school, in a
hacer
couple
que hacemos en
slides.
Bloxton. Tenemos
Number
varias
five,
opciones. instalaciones.
In keeping with our third theme, we would keep
Para que
all of our
tengamos
neighborhood school
el
models
tema
for
3, vamos
elementary.
a tener todas las escuelas o el modelo de escuelas del vecindario en la primaria, pero convertiríamos de kinder a cuarto grado. Necesitamos reajustar las zonas de asistencia para que eso, pero eso es para limitar la transición de kindergarten a primer grado de Musselman, del jardín de niños de Musselman, y también podemos darles una experiencia mejor si es que se están operando. Las escuelas operan como de kinder a cuarto grado en todas las primarias. Ahora, teniendo todas las escuelas de los vecindarios, si completamos todas las renovaciones en las escuelas de kinder a cuarto o de primero a cuarto, las renovaciones se harían en Colmano, Davenport, Hancock, Marshall Street, Bowfly y Whitehall. Consideraciones, la consideración número 7 sería que tengamos la escuela Bloxton y la convertamos en la séptima escuela primaria de kinder a cuarto, pero tendríamos que modernizarla y renovarla, tendríamos que hacerla problema como 5 de 500 y 600 niños, que ayudaría a los otros que pudieran absorber kinder, y también nos daría espacio para asegurarnos que los edificios ofrezcan programas y los niños se queden cerca de donde viven. Las otras cosas que podemos hacer, la opción A es tomar el edificio existente, renovarlo, la construcción renovativa, y hacerlo a una escuela, convertirlo en una escuela primaria más chica. La opción B es construir una escuela nueva completamente en la misma propiedad. Es importante que sepamos que la opción B pudiera costarnos hasta 25 millones de dólares. Eso es basando en cuenta la renovación y también lo que una escuela nueva pudiera causar. El número tal vez sería menos que eso, ya que, como mencionamos antes, tendríamos que traer Bloxton completamente con la ley de discapacitados americanos, y esos costos pudieran traernos cerca, tal vez un poco, tal vez es más caro renovarlos. De todos modos nos costaría de 5 a 10 millones de dólares más. Eso sería la escuela elementaria 7 en el distrito. Con eso tendríamos que vaciar Musselman y cómo pudiéramos usar este sitio. El equipo quería la consideración de convertir a Musselman a un centro para nuevos niños que necesiten apoyo en el idioma inglés. Esto pudiera darles apoyos intensivos que se identifican como principiantes en el idioma inglés. En el centro debería ser una duración corta, altos niveles de apoyo con la adquisición del idioma inglés y apoyos académicos. Y tenemos un número de estudiantes que están aquí y tienen interrupción en el aprendizaje o escuela limitada, y para poder hacer eso en un espacio pequeño por un periodo corto, entonces después de eso tendríamos que tener un periodo. Es la idea ahí. Y la última cosa es que si movemos el programa de Roosevelt a la preparatoria, tendríamos que completar renovaciones en Roosevelt. Tendríamos dos cosas, que sería dar más espacio para el administrativo, y también le haríamos accesible a la comunidad las opciones administrativas. Sé que he hablado bastante, no vamos a hablar con la porción de preguntas, opiniones, pensamientos, cualquier cosa que estén haciendo. Voy a dejar de compartir y quiero compartir a todos.
So one of two ways that you can participate right now. You can either raise your hand and I can activate
levantar la manita
and give your
para
comment.
que les dé espacio para que hablen.
And thank you, Mr. DeRosier, for moving this over to the main room. Or second, there's a Q&A box that you can type a question or a comment in which I'll be happy to read the question and answer to the best of my abilities. So with that, I will open it up for either hand raising and anyone who wants to give a verbal comment, or to post anything in the Q&A box for us to answer. Oh, we have a question in the box. From Mrs. Musselman, thank you so much for your question. If the admin building is moved to Roosevelt, what happens to the existing administration building? That is a great question. And I will tell you, one of the things when you look at this process, this is not going to be a short process by any stretch of the imagination. And I'll just give you an example of what a potential timeline could look like. So if we brought this to the board, we'll say in June, and we got their approval for this as it currently exists, we would probably need 2 years just to do those phase 1, priority 1 projects. And with that, we also know that the first construction project we would need to take on would be the high school project. Again, we talked about the capacity issues there. We would not be able to break ground on that for probably somewhere between 18 months and 2 years, between getting the architectural work done, the permits, the funding, all those pieces in line. And then we're probably looking at a 2 to 2.5 year construction window to get that first project done. So to get phase 1, priority 1 work done, and to get the high school piece done, we're probably looking at 4 years in. We then would probably take on the middle school piece, which would, while the high school is under construction, probably again 18 months to 2 years of architectural permitting, financing, all that, probably 2 years plus to build. So I say all that to say, well, like the admin moving to Roosevelt probably wouldn't happen for like 8 years. And I think a lot can and will evolve over that window. But I don't have an answer for the administration building because to me, it's not something we would, I think as things go, things would definitely need to evolve. I think projects would evolve both on timeline and scope, as funding, all those pieces. So this would remain as an asset to us, and we probably would either find a need for student programming, for district programming, or, at the end of it, if we got it all right, I think there's always the possibility that we demolish the building and maybe put in some much needed athletic fields or some open space. So that hasn't been determined, but we want to hold on to this as an asset as the projects go in sequence, that we may need this. Or I know at one of the prior town halls, somebody said, well, instead of moving the Roosevelt program into the high school, what if we move that to the administration building and we get the students a closer proximity to the electives and the extracurriculars? It's a great idea. It's one of those things we're going to hold it as an asset as we move through the project. I think the bigger pieces are going to be getting the priority 1 work done, getting the high school piece, like getting the major phases done, and then seeing as things move forward, how things will evolve. But we're not going to, sell it or unload it or do anything like that. So, but thank you for that question. And I thank everyone for bearing with me with a little long-winded answer on that. We do have a question. Do any of these projects require approval from the local voting blocks before you can proceed? So the short answer of that is yes. So even if the board approves this as a project, we'll say that, let's say they approve kind of this as a scope. The board would have to approve kind of each and every part as we go forward. So let's just even take that $30 million in phase 1 work. We're going to have to go out and get, scope of work. We're going to have to get proposals from contractors, and the board's going to have to approve the expenditure, the award of contracts, how much we're spending, for each and every part of that. The board's going to have to approve hiring an architect to design the new wing of the high school. They then would have to approve the financing before we can go, and there's approvals that we're going to have to do with PDE. So not only that, we're then going to have to go work with, like if we look at the first major project being at the high school, we're going to have to get building permits from West Norton to even be able to proceed with that. So to answer your question is, there's going to be lots and lots and lots of approval from our school board, from West Norton Township, from the municipality of Norristown, from East Norton, from Pennsylvania Department of Education. There's going to be lots and lots of approvals are going to be needed throughout the process as we go. So thank you for that question. Moving on, Mrs. Musselman's next question. I love the idea of having separate buildings for 5, 6, and 7, 8, since they are aged, so it's tough years for kids. Was the issue of busing considered, since now the district, we all know it is a case? So quite honestly, Mrs. Musselman, that's a great point. One of the things I mentioned in one of the other town halls, when we ideated around this facilities plan, was we tried not to get hung up on things like staffing and transportation in terms of let's plan big to get the setup for kids right. And throughout all of this, throughout all of this, we are trying to set kids up for the most successful educational pieces. In making sure we get the configurations right, we get the buildings modernized, and we're doing best by our kids. But at the end of the day, we're going to have to solve staffing. We're going to have to solve transportation. We do understand that transportation busing will look different. We understand at the mid-level that transportation costs will most likely increase because we're going to have to send all of our 5th graders to a single site, where right now there is some more walkability going with our 3. However, when we readjust attendance for our elementary schools, we may be able to recognize some transportation savings depending on how those boundaries are drawn there. So we recognize transportation is going to be something we're going to have to solve, but we don't think it's going to be anything that should or could detract from the projects, getting off the ground here. So for phase 1 work, will more teachers need to be hired, or will existing staff be enough? Overall, that's a great question. One of the things is looking at our district-wide enrollment. Between now and next year, we're going to hit pretty much a high point in our district enrollment. So I don't anticipate us having to hire new teachers based on student population. However, we are going to look to continue to invest more staffing to try to do things like reduce class sizes and do that as we go. But doing this as it is configured will not necessitate 25 new teachers to pull the plan off. Because like if you look at, let's just look at the middle school plan in particular, we would take the existing 5 middle school teachers that are at Bloxon and would distribute half to the 5-6 center and half to the 7-8 center. And again, the student population would work out that way. And actually, we probably would have to reconfigure all of our middle school staff based on their certifications. But we do anticipate staffing impact will be minimal. But as new money comes in, we're going to continue to invest to try to support students the best way that we can. So thank you for that question. Mrs. Milligan, good morning. You reference to the comments from the community town hall at Eisenhower. What are we doing with the feedback and comments? So great question. We've been collecting them at our in-person town halls, and obviously with the video ones, we're recording them. So we are going to collect them in a list and make sure that we share those out with everybody to say, here's what the collective feedback has been from everybody. And we 100% will be discussing them before we determine a final scope of what we move forward with. So that is a great question on there. And Mrs. Musselman, when will construction be done, mostly during the summer, and how will the school year be impacted? In terms of and let me just use the high school probably as the best illustrative example. We would construct a new wing onto the high school. And again, that would have to, it's probably be a 2 full years, almost, 365 days a year of construction to get it done in as quickly as we can. Now, doing that as an addition, we would continue to operate the building at full capacity as normally as we can. And then once the new wing is ready, we would open it up. Here's where it gets a little bit tricky, where, construction would get would start to impact the school year. which is once we open up the new wing at the high school, we still have the main building that we have to renovate. And yes, we would work to try to maximize the summers. Summertime's not going to be enough to hit the couple 100,000 square feet that we have up at the high school. So once we got the new wing done, probably what we'd be faced with is for the first probably year or so, or maybe even two, closing down hallways of the building at a time, moving them into the new wing so that we then could go in and renovate like first floor art wing classrooms. So we'd move all the art classes over to the new wing. We would then go in and renovate all the art classrooms. When they were done, we'd move those teachers back, and then we would move on to the next part of the building and maybe relocate all of the second floor biology classrooms. Then we'd go out to the new wing. We'd go in and renovate all of the biology classrooms, and then we would move those teachers back. So there would be a lot of moving parts to this. Is it ideal? No, this is a common practice. I know that's been used to try to get work done in a time-efficient process as possible. So for the high school and the middle schools, because we'd be adding the additions, we wouldn't have to consider like mobile classrooms or doing things like that. When we get to the elementary schools, quite honestly, we'd probably have to set up some modular classrooms out back and would cycle classrooms out to the modulars while the renovations would be going on during the school year. And again, we'd make sure that those areas are completely closed off to students and staff while the work's done, completely safe. It is standard practice, that everybody has their clearances to coming in while, if construction's going on while the school years are operating. And again, we would do everything in our power to minimize those impacts. And just the reality is to try to get this work done and not have it take 30 years. Work will have to go on during the school year. But thank you for that question. And again, thank you everybody that has posted the questions in the chat. So any other questions, either in the Q&A or that someone wants to raise their hand and offer a verbal comment this morning? Mrs. Musselman, will any of the funding be coming from the general school budget? So that is a good question. What we'll have to be working through. So the short answer there is yes and no. So we have been working as we have looked to improve our district finances. Is we have finally established a capital projects fund, of which we do have some money put aside in there. As we sit today, that phase one, high priority one work, we have almost enough in our capital reserve right now to pay for that work. To take on $300 million, yeah, we're going to be looking at, we would say general fund dollars or general, additional state revenue money that we would then put into the capital reserve fund. We also, quite honestly, would be looking to borrow money. So again, this wouldn't be like an annual, we would borrow like the high school project. I believe we got an early estimate, I think $40 million or $45 million for the new wing plus the renovation probably pushes it to about a $70 or $80 million project. We would finance that through a public bonding process. And, from there, we would, like you said, between capital reserve and through general fund would make the debt payments going back. And we do have the ability, again, to kind of stretch it out like a mortgage. We don't have to pay it all back at once. We don't have to have all that $80 million sitting in general fund at one time. We can finance it over time. Fortunately, as a public entity, we do get better interest rates than even are available to the public. But one of the important pieces there is we will need to see an increase in state funding that we can then invest towards making those debt payments so that we don't have to raise taxes to do so. So I think I answered that question in terms of with kind of how it gets paid for. And when we get closer, certainly, Mr. Miller, our Chief Financial Officer, would do some public presentations on exactly how we intend to pay for this and what the impact would be on the budget and on taxpayers and things like that. So thank you for that question. Our anonymous attendee, we have a kindergarten student next fall and a current kindergarten student headed to first grade next year. Based on the timeline and phases, there seems to be uncertainty with where they would end up going to middle school and or the proposed 5, 6, and 7, 8. What is the timeline for the middle school changes? No, that is a great question, and thank you for that. So again, all of this depends on when we finish this process on what we bring to the board as a recommendation and what they would approve. If I would say optimistically, if the major pieces of this are supported by the board and we stay on track with this, it would be 2 years of phase 1 work. And again, during those 2 years, we're doing the architecturals and prepping for the high school project. We're then doing 2 years of the high school build while we're doing the all of the front loading for the middle school project. So that puts us at 4 years out. We probably break ground optimistically 4 years in, maybe 5 years in on the middle school project. We'll be looking at probably a 2 to 3 year construction window there. So we're looking probably of when the 5th grade building would open. If everything went perfectly, I'd say the earliest is probably 6 years from now. When again, we'd probably open both the 5, 6, and 7, 8 simultaneously. Actually, we'd have to do that based on the reconfiguration piece. So I'd say the earliest, if everything went ideally, and again, everything we stay on track with what we're asking everyone to consider right now, we'd be looking probably 6 to 7 years from now on the middle school pieces to take effect. And Mrs. Musselman, were teachers involved in the planning process? They were. We did invite, the same as we invited our parents and community members and families. We did have representatives, our administrative, our teaching staff, and our support staff as part of the workshop process. And we continue to invite them to be part of our town halls. We've had some great feedback at some of our earlier town halls from teachers. And again, we continue to listen and learn from everybody before we move any of this forward, which is why, again, I want to stress, all of these are things we're asking people to consider. We're not at a recommendation phase yet for a lot of reasons. A lot of those are financial and timing, but also we want to make sure we get this right. I mean, if we're going to spend $300 million, we've got, I don't want to say one chance to do this right, but we've one chance to do this right. And again, it's going to be money and investment that carries us forward, beyond whatever a 10-year construction window for the next 10 to 20 to 30 or more years moving forward as a school district. So, no, Mrs. Musselman, very much so. We want to make sure we've offered and we continue to offer the voice of our teachers to make sure that we get this right before we move forward. So thank you. Dr. Weichert, thank you for yours. Thank you for continuing to look out for the best interests of our students and community. I'm confident the team will consult our local environmental agencies to make sure we consider the impacts, water management, flooding. Dr. Weichert, I'm going to pause there. 100% no project moves forward without all of those things being addressed. And also, I think one of the things we'll have opportunities to consider as part of construction is, can we be even more environmentally friendly with green energy? Can we look at incorporating more solar, and really take a look at our carbon footprint when we do all these projects. So, certainly we want to consider the open space in our district, since we want to make sure that our students have, again, it's all about those learning experiences and setting up our learning spaces best for kids. So thank you for your comments that you posted in the chat. Mrs. Milligan, question, how do you go from consideration to recommendation to approval? And will there be additional opportunities for community input? So Mrs. Milligan, yes. So we are finishing the last of our planned town halls this evening at Aclamo. I know at our last town hall meeting, there was a request for some additional dates, and I've already brought that to the administrative team, and we are going to look to offer probably a good 4 or 5 more sessions from our community. We then, will gather, we're going to post all that information. And as we move that to recommendation, it'll be, the administration really listening and fine tuning that. And then ultimately we'll bring it to our board committees for some formal discussion. And eventually those recommendations will go to the board. All of those are public processes, both the Facilities and Finance Committee, where probably a recommendation would go when we were looking to move a recommendation forward, would start there. And then again, it would have to go publicly to the board, which again, people are very welcome to come to those meetings as we ask the board to consider eventually voting on a recommendation to move it forward. So there will be many, many more opportunities for us to move evolve the considerations and get them to recommendations, but ultimately it is the school board's responsibility for approval. And again, those are done in public settings, and they will be well advertised. We will let people know when anything is going to move from a consideration to a recommendation, and when any of those things are going to be on board agendas, we'll make sure that they are well advertised and known to the public. And like you said, we're still, I don't want to say a ways off, because I think we're hearing a lot of good sentiment for some big pieces of the plan. We've gotten some good feedback on some things that I know some shared interest partners have asked us to reconsider, and we're certainly going to do that before we take any next steps moving forward. So thank you for I think that's a great set of questions and great information for our public in terms of what we're going to do in terms of next steps. You are welcome, Mrs. Milligan. My pleasure. Anybody else with any input, questions, thoughts? Oh, thank you so much. You are welcome again. This is a big commitment to our anonymous attendee who said thank you for the info. The reason we're doing this is because we're not going to go down this road quickly or lightly. $300 million is a big lift. And as I talked about, when we go down this road, we have a real opportunity to do something different and significant for our students and our community. I think it sends such a wonderful message to this community that we are serious about investing in our schools and in Norristown. But with that, we want to make sure that we do it thoughtfully, intentionally, and do it right, that in a way that's going to carry us forward. So thank you so much for that. Mrs. Musselman, again, thank you for your kind words there. Anybody else, any questions, thoughts, or input? Thank you, Dr. Weichert. Well, if we have no additional thoughts or questions or input or feedback, I'm going to call a close to today's town hall and give everyone the gift of time back in their day. Thank you so much for joining us today. Again, please continue to monitor the district website as we collect the thoughts and feedback and get that public. And please look for additional town hall and input opportunities as we continue to move this forward. Wishing everybody a wonderful day and Friday. Friday, wow, I wish it was Friday. Have a wonderful Tuesday. And thanks so much for joining us today. Everybody be well and looking forward to seeing everyone soon.